Hello and welcome back. This is Sherri with Heart and Soulful in the studio today with a very fun release, and it's been a long time coming. So if you have been watching my channel for a while, you know that at the beginning of the year I did kind of a retrospective of the year and all of my unfinished projects. So those of you who are anxious for me to do volume 2 of this, I am working on it, but as I was going through all of my papers and things from volume 1, I had started a digital kit, but I hadn't finished it. So I made myself sit down for the last 3 or 4 days and work on just getting this kit finished, and it's finally done. So I want to go over it with you today. I'm so excited. I will put a link down in the description to this entire playlist where I created this journal. If you haven't watched it, it's a finished volume 1. I am working on volume 2, and so far I've just made the cover, and I did that on camera. So I will also put a link to volume 2's playlist, so if you want to start with me on that one from the beginning, you can. Today I want to go through the pack that I created and then show you where I used it in my journal so that you'll see. I'm really new to doing these kits, and it's maybe not done how some do with the collages and that kind of thing. Because I had already done the journal and I created a lot of the elements in this journal myself, I just wanted to share those items with you. And so this was my way of doing that. So part of the pages are have like a vintage background, and I'll show you that background paper. Some of them I did on white, just with a white background. And the reason I did that is because those also are great to print on vellum, and that's how I used them in my journal. So I wanted to keep the background clean so that you would be able to do it both ways also. So the first thing that you're going to see, this is in my Etsy shop and it's live now. You'll just see this is a thumbnail, and there's 16 pages. They were all done 300 DPI, and I've done them in both 8.5 by 11 and A4 size. The last kit that I did was the vintage book, my vintage books, and I had a question about if I had those in A4, and it dawned on me that all the other kits that I've done, you know, they could be printed either way, and people could scale them up to A4 probably without much problem because they're all just kind of art backgrounds. But anything that has writing in it or actual photos, elements, that kind of thing, it's really best to do them both sizes so that when you print them out either way, everything's going to be to its original scale. So that's why it took me a little time, because I wanted to make sure that even on the 8.5 by 11 pages, that everything would be scaled to the same size I used in my book. That's if you can print borderless. If you can't print borderless, then it's going to scale everything down just enough for that border. So I'm going to recommend that you make sure when you print these out that you look at your settings and make sure that you have it as filling up the entire page as much as you can so that you'll be as close to the original sizes. I'll show you some things about printing too as I go along here, because I am working with a new printer myself that I have all figured out, but it had some little things. I'm working with an Epson EcoTank 8500, so I can share with you how I've been printing this pack that you're going to see today. So this is the thumbnail. You'll see there's 16 designs, 8.5 by 11 and A4. So I'm just going to start going through a lot of these. I have printed both on both sizes so that you can see, because some of them I had to maybe adjust where I arranged things so that they would fit on both sizes of paper. So I started with my 8.5 by 11. This was a lot of the photos in here. Actually, most of the photos are of the Ghost Town Bodie. That is the theme of my Vintage Grunge journal. And I made a lot of elements, so I'm including them here. And in my book, I started out with the front door. So I've sized it just like in my book. And when I did it so that the door opens. So you're going to have that. Then these hinges I actually took from actual rusty hinges that I have and scanned them, and I used them in my book. And my original attempt to do this was not as good as how this turned out. I have a new printer and it scans so much better. So you can just see all the rusty detail that was an actual rusty hinge that I used in mine. Then I did some grungy wallpaper on the back side of my door. So I included that too. It's just layers on layers. You'll find also the vintage wallpaper pack and the fresco backgrounds. Those two are also things that I used, but they're not in this kit. If I used them in a particular element, I put them in. But otherwise, those kits kind of give you more freedom to use them however you want. And then this is just a little pocket that I had done that was a little embossed here. So it's actually embossed and kind of made to look like a tooled leather thing. So that's where I used it, was on a little pocket, and I've attached that there. And then again on the A4, you can see a little bit difference in the color, and that's because I printed on two different kinds of paper. My 8.5 by 11, I printed on presentation paper. I had been using the premium presentation mat, which is this one, and it's a little thicker, 44 pound. And someone had recommended that they also have it in 27 pounds. So I did print all of the 8.5 by 11 here on the presentation paper mat, the 27 pound. So you can just see the difference in the color. One thing that's really important to do is when you print whatever paper you're using, make sure you match your printer settings to the type of paper you're using, because it will alter the color, and I'll show you an example of that when I get to the photos. So this is the first page. This one was done on A4 paper, and I didn't have A4 paper until a few days ago to test out my layout to make sure everything printed fully. And so I don't know what quality this is. I just found this on Amazon. I can put a link down below if you are interested. It is comparable to 28 pound paper, and it is 105 GSM. It says 70 pound text, but it was comparable to 28 pound paper. So, and it's kind of just plain, nothing fancy paper. And so as you can see, without even altering color or anything, it just kind of changed it a little bit. So that is the first page. Okay, and this page here is an actual sort of artistic element that I did, layering one of my photos. This photo is included in the photos. I'll show that. This was a piece of my rusted fabric, and I also have a few pieces of rusted fabric, and it may include this one in my freebie file. I'll put a link to the freebie file down below also, because there were a few things from the series that I just offered in a free file. But this is an element that I kind of compiled, and I have here in the back of that signature. So I went ahead and just kind of scanned the whole thing for you. But this photo will be available to you in the photos, and that way you can kind of create your own thing too. But this is just what I had made. You could use it as a card, you know, a journal card or something if you don't want it part of your book. This was a piece of paper that I made using a piece of old barnwood, and then I just layered another photo on top of it that was the inside of an antique book that I have. So I did use that in here as the background to this page. I also did a little addition with my gel plate that I didn't do on this, but you can use a stencil or something like that. This was to kind of mimic the tin ceiling. And then this is actually, this label is started out like this because it's galvanized metal, and then I just aged it for my book. That I actually took a photo from. I have an old wash sink in my greenhouse, and this is the brand, the label on it. So that's page 2. And then again, this is on the A4 size. So it's scaled pretty well, the same. And then this page is, I actually made that from embossing an actual piece of metal. And I embossed it on watercolor paper by hand. I just wetted the watercolor paper and then mooshed it in there to create this three-dimensional piece, and then used some metallics and different things to make it look like old metal. So that I scanned after it was like this. And you can see just the different prints. I haven't adjusted the color at all. It's just which setting you do on your printer for, they'll do sometimes an automatic enhance if you don't default and click that off. So that was not, those aren't permanently adjusted. What you see on this paper, I think, is closer to what you'll get. This is on the A4 size. And then there were a couple of vintage recipe cards that I also used in this. This whole first signature was kind of about the house. And so it's all kind of related to different rooms in the house. So these are some recipe cards that I just had turned into journal cards in there. And then this was just a little vintage pattern piece that is also used in my journal. Just as a little piece of vintage looking paper. So it started out like this, and then I just used some different distress sprays and things. And this was printed out on pretty thin paper so that it was kind of patterny feeling. And then this is the second signature in my book is a church. And I have an antique hymn book that I used the cover of, and then some of the songs inside. So this actual piece, and then the background was one of my vintage wallpaper pieces that are in that kit. This piece is actually one that you can fold in half, and it's the folio in my book. So I've used it here. So it actually starts here, and then the back side of it is here. And again, on this one, I cut a door and put a window into. So that is actually scaled to the size of my journal, and then again in the A4. In the A4, because I didn't want it to change its size, you'll just see it kind of a different color border that was another vintage paper behind it. So it's really kind of an 8.5 by 11 sitting on top of the A4 paper. And then in my church signature, I ended up making a lot of little elements. So there is, let's see, this is the music that I used behind this photo of the church, of the front of the church, and that piece is here. And then the prayer request card is one that I designed and just made for little journal cards. So that's there. And then this is a little baptism certificate that you can use as a journal card. That's how I used it, just as a little journal card. This is a Vacation Bible School badge, and I did it also as sort of a journal card tag kind of thing. And then this little hymnal is really cute. This is actually a front, and you can kind of faintly see the back side of it. I cut it out and folded it in half to make a little tiny mini journal. It's the hymn cover, again, because in the back of this is like the inside of the church, and this is to represent the pew with the little holder in the back for the hymnal. And so it's actually just a little thing with kind of some different scraps. And then another thing in the church, one of the folios was meant to represent like the church program. When you go into church, it will tell you, who's speaking and what songs you're going to sing and all that sort of thing. And so I had created this thing in the front, and then this is actually from an old Bible, and I used that. That's here. So again, it's another folio. So the back side of it is this pocket here. So just folding that in half and trimming it to fit your book. And then again in the A4 size. And then this one, this is actually, was my husband's Bible as a child, and I just made a little notepad with that. And then these photos are just vintage photos of different church elements. So these are church ladies that I made a little card out of here. And again, if you watch the video, I go and explain how I made my photos look even more vintage. This one is in the church, and it is another little card that pulls out of those stained glass windows. And actually that little saying I put below here, I was trying to fill up as much of your space as I could. And then this was a wedding in the church, and that I put inside of a little lace pocket of a vintage bride and groom. And then this is like the potluck that you'd have after a baptism or something. And that again is just another journal card. Okay, and then again in the A4 size. And then this is one on, these are not necessarily in order how they are in my book. It was more of how I could arrange the pages. This one I intended to be printed on vellum. I took pictures of my antique bottle collection, and then I used them as elements in my journal. So I put a collection of items that I used printed on vellum. And so I've put a reminder here. So this pocket is in the house one here, cut down, but that's a little vellum pocket. And then the sewing machine was also, I attached it to a piece of fabric, but it is also printed on vellum. And then the bottles I actually have done a few things with. So I included only the ones that I used in my journal so far. I may include more bottles in the volume 2. I ended up using these in several ways. I did them printed them on vellum first, cut them out, and then laminated them. I think I may have laminated them and then cut them out, but you can get the idea, just so that they were thicker. And then I used them as the front and back cover of a little bottle notebook, and then a little bottle pocket. So you can see that they're a little bit different. I think I flipped it for one, and it's maybe -1 bottle. So I went ahead and put them all. This was my original design. And then you can just trim it to fit however you want to fit it. But these I printed on vellum, printed on the A4. So the scale is the same. It's just arranged, to fit on that page. And then printed on vellum. I had someone recommend a different vellum to me than I had been using. And it seems a little more faded than the vellum I was using. But the nice thing about it is the ink was dry when it came out of the printer. I didn't have to I didn't have to wait for it to dry and worry about it smearing. So this vellum, the one that was recommended to me, was this one. I'll put a link to it down below too. And it worked fine. This is the one that I was using before, and it came out a little darker. I think the ink came out a little darker, but it was wet, and you really had to make sure you dried it before you touched anything. So that is the vellum, one vellum page. And then these, you can see I have bordered all of these. I didn't print these out on A4. They are all set up for A4 as well. I just didn't take the time to print them all out. But all these are photos, and I'll kind of show you where I did them. So I think there's 5 or 6 pages of photos. So in this one, I have the kitchen. These are all on the house signature. The kitchen one I just kind of stuck in the back there, just because I really liked the photo, but I just kind of have it printed on vellum and stuck in the pocket. I printed her on fabric here. I have done demos on printing on fabric. In fact, there's a standalone video now on my channel that you can see how I printed on fabric. And so she was actually done on this fabric. And then this is here. And on mine, the mirror was actually missing. So I cut, with a die cut, I cut out the shape of the missing mirror for my pocket. And then this one had clothes hanging on the wall here. And I put it high on my page because the clothes were hanging high on the wall, and there was a grungy mattress in it. So I have my grungy mattress with a love letter under the pillow. And I think that's it on this one. And then these are the schoolhouse. I guess I should have labeled this as the schoolhouse, and then these are all photos in the schoolhouse. And in my journal, they start here with the one with the organ, and then the schoolhouse that I wrapped around. And then let's see, the chalkboard one, blackboard one made into a little pocket. This one's kind of just sitting in front of a pocket, so you could write on this. I think that's all of these. And then the children, I just love that picture. And it's also printed on vellum and just made into a pocket. Most of the other elements in the school section were Tim Holtz products, so I don't have them on here. The Bodhi in the front there is what I'm using at the beginning of my book. And then this is the baptism picture, which is a pocket here. And then I did 2 copies of these, so maybe I'll switch one out. And because I think I forgot the stained glass windows, I'll change one of these pages to be the stained glass windows because I have 2 of this America the Beautiful. The reason I did it is because you might be printing one page on cardstock and then you want one on vellum, because I used for that one song, I used both elements, and that is here. I used it on cardstock, and then I also printed it on vellum and then just tore part of it out so that it would be a little vellum pocket on top of my vellum music. So I will swap that out because I think I forgot the stained glass windows. And then this one is the truck that's at the end of my first signature, that song. And then that's the front of the church. I have the front of the church at the front and the back of the church at the back. This is the back of the church, and it was printed onto cardstock actually and made into a pocket. And then this one is again in the house, and that's the barn photo that I used for that little kind of artsy collage thing. That's the barn there. And then the one with George Washington in it's here in the front, just as sort of a little flat kind of thing. I was attempting to make it so that in Bodhi, when you look in these houses, you're looking through windows and doorways. And so I was really trying to give that effect of seeing through one thing to the next thing. This is kind of a multi-purpose room. And so I actually tore that picture in half just to give it some different interest. So I tore it in half and then glued it staggered with just a little notepad in there. And then this one I loved because it's missing the handle, and it kind of looks like the handle, the embossed handle that I did here. So I actually used that as a kind of a corner pocket with a piece of grungy wallpaper behind it. And then again, the mirror on this in the photo is hanging crooked, which drove me nuts. So I just cut it out and layered it like it would be kind of a mirror window seeing through again. And then I had room in my file for a few more pieces, so I went ahead and I've used some of this. Oh, it's the background. I had tea stained it after. So this is just that vintage postcard paper, just used as part of a folio. So I've done it here, and then I did 2 different music ones that I've used. This was the actual piece that I printed it on vellum, and I've included it in another one of the photo ones, that small piece, which actually I could swap that out, I suppose, because I'm giving you the full sheet. So maybe I'll swap that one out to be and put the stained glass windows. That makes more sense because it's going to be printed on. So it would be on this one. I'll put the stained glass windows here if I can get them to fit right, because you have this whole piece here. And then this is the same music paper, but without the grungy background. I had used one of my fresco finishes and put behind this music and changed the opacity to get that. So actually this is a whole different layout, it looks like, too. But anyway, so more music. You can always use lots of music paper. So I have those extra sheets just to be backgrounds for things. So I think that is about it for the pages. You have seen the stained glass window, and I will be adding that. It will all be up before you see any of this. So by the time you're ready to purchase anything, it will be there. But it looks like that. And it was done on vellum too. So that will be there. And then I wanted just to show you real quick on printing, just to compare what happens if you don't pay attention to your settings. So On my new computer, my new printer, it's an Epson, and there is an Epson Photo Plus. You use that, I don't know what, I guess you'd call it an application. You use that and you set the settings through that to get your borderless printing. So when I click on that, it automatically wants to enhance the color, but I don't want that. I've already adjusted anything I want. What I see on the screen is really what I want to print. So what happened, these were printing and it had not turned off that automatic enhancement. So it printed them out very dark, which is fine if that's what you want, but that's not how they were originally done. So I reprinted them and I made sure that my setting matched the type of paper that I was using. So I'll show you the difference. They were supposed to be, just kind of the sepia, and that's just quite a bit of difference. So just make sure when you print that you have your settings to match the type of paper that you have. So I'm gonna finish up getting that one element that I neglected and have this all up for you at once. So have a great rest of your day. I'm so excited that this is finally out. Now I can actually get to working on volume 2, and I plan to do that very, very soon. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.